This video has been prompted by a request for information from one of my subscribers, and it sent me on a little bit of a mad scramble, to be honest. I'll just set this camera down at a better angle. There we go. The question that was raised is, will a Pacific P1096 collet adapter screw onto either a GME base or a MB10 base, or an RFI MB10 base? So that's the collet adapter. I've just taken it out of its plastic bag. Hopefully be able to see that. And yes, it will screw onto both of these. There we go, lovely stuff. That one and that one. There you have it. So that answers the question. Anyway, in the process of the bit of a scrabble trying to sort stuff out, I went through my junk pile to have a look at some of these Pacific bases that I'd pulled out of service. And interestingly, I discovered that there's two thread types, and hopefully you'll be able to see that on the camera. I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that's the earlier thread type, and the thread pitch is quite coarse. And this one here is the later thread type, and this later thread type will also the same thread as the there you go, as the collet adapter. So hopefully that answers that question fully. However, in my scrabble through a lot of these bases that I'd pulled off and thrown in the junk pile, so to speak, it reminded me of the reasons why I don't particularly like these bases anymore. I'll just get these guys out of the way. The first thing is, when you do a comparison, let's get the GME base off. When you do a comparison between bases, one of the first things that you will notice is the rubber washer, which is vital, of course, for keeping the moisture out of the inside of the customer's vehicles. On the Pacific base is actually quite a lot thinner than the others. There's I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. So in this hand here, when I'm shaking on camera, that's about half the thickness of this GME base, which is a very similar thickness to the RFI. So if you've got a slightly uneven roof that you're trying to seal up on, you're much more likely to get a seal with this washer than with this one. So that's the first point. The second point is that when you're applying this particular antenna base, you're going to drill a hole through the roof, true enough, but then you actually have to thread an enormous long length of cable down through the hole, thread it all the way down, and then you have to go up inside your vehicle with the nut and thread the nut right the way up the entire length of this cable inside the roof to get it to tighten up. Now, if you're in an awkward, so that's sometimes quite a difficult thing to do, but if you're in an awkward situation, you've actually got very little room between the roof and, say, the headlining, how the heck do you get in to tighten that nut up? You can reach in there with a 6-inch crescent probably, but it can be quite awkward. So, among my tools, and this may be useful to somebody, I purchased second hand from the second-hand tool store where I live, a tube spanner. This enables me to reach in through the hole. I've cut a slot in the side of the tube spanner so I can slide the tube spanner over the cable, present it up over the nut and tighten that up from below the roof. And then I can put a screwdriver through these two holes here to give it an extra bit of a tweak to, if I need to, pass an ordinary screwdriver through there, give it a bit of a tweak to tighten things up. Then I can actually pop this tube spanner out and pull the tube spanner off the cable. So by virtue of that little technique, I've been able to overcome a lot of the problems associated with trying to reach up into limited space between the ceiling lining and the roof to do that nut up. Anyway, the other problem we have with these bases is that the base itself is made of thermosetting plastic, and if you heat this to solder the coax cable on there, if you heat that too much, this plastic melts, and once it melts and starts to come adrift on you, it's very difficult apart from replacing the entire base. There's not much you can do about it, and you're much more likely to overheat this and have this melt than this style of base. You've got a far longer shaft here, so when you're soldering on the top of that, you're much less likely to have the heat travel down here and create a significant problem down here, whereas this one is so jolly short, it'll melt this thermosetting plastic, and it kind of makes you tempted not to apply sufficient heat here to do a decent soldering job. You kind of get tempted to just kind of dab the solder on there. Now with soldering, of course, you need to apply sufficient heat to enable the solder to thoroughly wet both this brass thing here and the cable which is coming up the center. And because you're tempted to hurry, you've got a greater chance of that soldering job there becoming a future problem to you. Anyway, as a result of those kind of issues, I tend not to use these bases, but that's just a personal preference on my part. Anyway, this hopefully this tube socket idea might be able to assist some of you if you're using these bases, to enable you to slide something onto the cable like that, pass it up over the nut and do it up, particularly if you can only get your hand up in the gap between the roof and the ceiling. You can at least get the thing, you know, fist tight by wrapping your hand around it and giving a jolly good tweak. Anyway, over to you guys. You know, we're always interested in people's comments, and you know, down there's where you put them.